All right, Shevuos, good morning, good tevach. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilsim Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for Mir Hashem dedicating all of the shir and drushos this year as a zechus for Besoros Tovos for all of Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan Haba Lina Latova, Steve and Terry Zinn. In loving memory of Steve's mother Doris Zin Devora Bas Rabbi Shmuel Yoel Zichron Livracha, on the occasion of her fifth yard site. And our day of learning, sponsor Paul Pollack in memory of Rabbi Aaron Walpinski, Rabbi Aaron Yehuda Ben Ruvain, who taught me how to be a Baal Kriya and who learned with me every Shabbos afternoon during my high school years. Beautiful, beautiful. Meretz Hashem, the Sham Mishav and Aliyah Rabose, we hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all the Neshamas will have Aliyah, all the families in the Chamas, all those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu should, Meretz Hashem, bring home our hostages, should allow our soldiers to, Meretz Hashem, be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yadayim. We, of course, followed the news from Eretz Yisrael very intently. We saw about the direct hit in the apartment building in Bat Yam that has so far claimed a number of lives and still people being recovered in the rubble. Again, overwhelming. It's been overwhelming times for our people, and the overwhelming nature of these times continue, as we spoke about yesterday, just on Shabbos. Our obligation to recognize that we are all part of the army of Am Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should Hashem give us the continued koach and the continued resolve, each of us to do our part, to make our contribution. And halavai, the week is just beginning. And let's hope that Emir Hashem, as it progresses, so Klal Yisrael's victory will be quick and decisive, and Emir Hashem will usher in a period of shalom, simcha, and bracha, not just for Am Yisrael and not just for Medinas Yisrael, but Emir Hashem for all of humanity. We'll say with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Memhe. Thank you to Rabbi Richter for giving a great shir yesterday. So our daf is Memhe. We are picking up on the bottom of Mem Dalet Amud Beis 44b, just literally the last line. So remember again, we're picking up mid-Mishnah. So actually, interestingly enough, most of today is a Mishnah. The entire Amud Aleph is a Mishnah. So Meretz Hashem, we are picking up again, last line on Mem Dalet Amud Beis. We'll say, and again, this is our last week also of Masechah Shevuos. No, don't smile, don't grin, right? No, this is great. Remember, if there's a problem, always remember, the problem is with me, never with the Masechta, right? Just always understand, the Masechta is perfect. The Gemara is perfect. The Torah is perfect. If something doesn't stem, something doesn't click, again, you could put it on me. You can always put it on the Maggid share, but never put it on the Gemara itself. It's always perfect. I just might have to tune something inside of me. So let's go. Shekneido chashal shvuah cases. Remember again, the Mishnah was talking about a variety of different cases. We're now focusing on what we call kind of colloquially a shvuas heses, which refers to rabbinic shvuas, right? Up until now, we've been focusing on different types of biblical shvuas. So now we're talking about rabbinic shvuas. And of course, rabbinic shvuas operate in a little bit of a different way. So specifically over here, the Gemara is talking about this idea of shekenegdo chashad ala shvuah. That let's say again, I have a legal dealing with someone, and the person who I'm contending with, who technically should be the one who is supposed to swear, let's say is disqualified from taking an oath for whatever the reason. Then what we do is we flip the shvuah. So for example, Gemara says shekenegdo chashad shvuah ketzad, top of memhei achas shvuah sa'idos v'achas shvuah sapikadon v'achas shvuah shav. So we'll say, for example, let's say again, I have a court case with Ruvain. I have a legal dispute with Ruvain. And so we're supposed to deal with this matter through the taking of a shvuah. And really it should be Ruvain who is taking the shvuah. But Ruvain can't take the shvuah. Why? Because he's been in violation. Rather, it's of a shvuah sa'idos, a shvuah sapikadon, a shvuah shav, or for example, so in those cases, what we'd be talking about over here is, let's say, for example, Ruvain is known to have taken a false oath of testimony, or a false oath of a pikadon, or he's taken a shvuas shav, he's taken an oath in vain, or one of us was a gambler. In this case, we'll call Ruvain was a gambler, right? Melave beribis, or Ruvain lends with interest, umafricha yonim, or he races pigeons, which is also another form of gambling, v'socher shvius, or he goes ahead and he does business with Shemitah produce. So I'll say, so in all of these cases, the point that the Mishnah is making over here is, I'm in this legal dispute with Ruvain. Ruvain really should be the one taking the shvuah. What's the issue over here? What's the issue? Ruvain can't. Why can't he? because his integrity has been compromised, either because he has previously sworn falsely, right? Or because he's engaged in other activities which generally compromise one's integrity and preclude them from taking a shvuah. So what do you do in all of these cases? Shekenegdo nishba v'notel. Ultimately, again, what Chazal said is we flip the shvuah. So I'll swear, even though, again, I really shouldn't be the one swearing, I'll swear, and therefore, again, be able to extract my money in that way. Incredible. Okay, we'll see. We'll see more about these cases in the Gemara as well. Hayushneim chashudin. Here's what's interesting. Let's say both Reuven and I are both chashud al shvuah. I don't know. Both of us are gamblers, right? Both of us are mesachek kuvya, right? So it's hard to pass up on a good game of kuvya, right? So again, both of us are disqualified. So what do you do in that case? So the Gemara says, Mishnah says, Chazra Shulim Koma. We put the shvuah back where it belongs. So in other words, okay, essentially, if we're both compromised, so pretty much like we cancel each other out, and the halacha is just applied as it would normally be applied. To Rabbi Yossi, that's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir says no. Rabbi Meir says yachloku. Rabbi Meir says no. What we do is we split the claim. Rabbi Meir, because we'll see more of this in the Gemara. But Rabbi Meir says no. You can't allow either of us to swear. In other words, just because we're both compromised doesn't mean you restore the shvuah back to where it was, and one of us should swear because we're both compromised. So therefore, again, Rabbi Meir says yacholku, we split it. Now, how exactly that plays out, l'maisa, we'll see in the Gemara. The chen v'nei pinkasa case. That was a very interesting case. What's the case of chen v'nei pinkasa? So remember again, literally chen v'nei pinkasa means a shopkeeper with his ledger. What's that case? Ketzad. So lo shiyomar lo ksov al pinkasi sha'ata chayev limasayim zuz. So it's not a case where let's say I'm the chenveni, right? I'm the shower again. I go into Reuven. Reuven's the shopkeeper. It's not the pshat that I say to Reuven, do me a favor, write down in your ledger that I owe you 200 zuz. Rather, what's the case? Ella, this is very interesting. Ella, omer lo tein libni sasayim chitin, tein lepoali sela mos. So what happens? I go into the shopkeeper, and I say to the shopkeeper, listen, I need to pay my workers. Do me a favor, pay my workers in merchandise, and give them a credit up to a sela of mos. All right, so in other words, I say to them, I'm sending in my employees for their pay. They're going to come to your store, essentially give them credit or extend to them credit of $100, right? And I'll pay you for that. Okay, now let's say what happens. Hu omer nasati. It's interesting enough what occurs. The chenveni claims I paid the workers. In other words, I gave the workers the merchandise that you asked me to. Vehein omrim lo natalnu. Here's the problem. The workers said, we didn't take anything. So there's a double claim against me now, right? What's the double claim? The chenveni wants me to pay him because he says, chenveni claims I extended the credit or I gave the merchandise to the workers. The workers are claiming against it because the workers are saying, we didn't get paid. So there's a double claim against me over here. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, Hu nishba v'notel. The chenveni swears that he paid, and therefore he's able to extract money from me. Ve'hein nishba in v'notlin. And the workers are also able to swear. They also take a shvuah. And halacha l'maisa are able to collect again from me. So the Gemara says, which is a fascinating solution to this. Comes along Benanas says, what are you talking about? Ketzad elu v'elu ba'im lidei shvuas shav. Benana says, how can you structure a halachic resolution like that? They both say there's one guarantee in that solution, which is what? Someone's lying, right? Someone's lying. So Benana says, how can you legalize a shvuah? Essentially, what you're saying is we're going to allow for someone to definitively take a shvuas shav. Someone's lying. So the Gemara says, Ella, hu notel shelo b'shvuah. Rather, again, Benanas proposes the following idea. Benanas says the chenveni is entitled to collect from me without a shvuah. Chenveni is able to collect with me without a shvuah. Ve'hein notlin shelo b'shvuah. And ultimately, again, they also are able to collect without a shvuah. So this is fascinating. So essentially, Benanas says everyone collects, but everyone without a shvuah. All right, fascinating. Again, I will say, well, remember, it's just the Mishnah. It's a very detailed Mishnah, but we're obviously going to put the meat on the bones in the Gemara. Next, Amar lechenveni, tein li b'dinar peras. Another case, I go over to the chenveni. I say, chenveni, I'd like to purchase a dinar's worth of produce from you. The nasan lo. So the chenveni gives me the produce. Amar lo, tein li also dinar. So what happens? So the chenveni says, okay, now pay me. Amar lo nasativ lacha unasato bo'en pali. So what happens? I say to the chenveni, I paid you. I gave you, right? I gave you the dinar and you put it in your pouch. In other words, I paid him already. So we'll say, what's the halach over here? Yishava bal habayis shenasan lo es hadinar. So in this case over here, I swear, I'm the bal habayis, I swear that I paid the chenveni with the dinar. Okay, I swear that I paid him, and then I exempt myself with the shvuah. Amar lo tainli es hapedos. So we'll say, what happens in the flip case? Let's say again, same case. I go over to the chenveni. I say to the chenveni, I'd like to purchase a dinar of produce. So again, in this case over here, I give him the dinar. And now I say, give me the produce. Amar lo nasatem lecha v'holachtem l'soch beisecha. So the chenveni says, I gave you the produce. I gave you the produce already. Like what's there to talk about? You already took it home. So what's the halacha? Yishava chenveni. The chenveni swears that he gave the produce. So also, I say, interestingly enough, if you notice over here, the Tanakama has the same idea. In case number one, where ultimately, again, the chenveni is claiming the dinar. So ultimately, again, the balabayis goes ahead and swears that he paid and he exempts himself. In case number 2, where again, the chenveni claims that he already gave the produce, so the chenveni swears that ultimately, again, he gave the produce. Rabbi Huda says no. Rabbi Huda says, Kol shaperos biyado, yado al ha'alyon. Rabbi Huda says, whoever is in possession of the produce has the upper hand. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. So Rashi is in the short lines, about 5 lines in. Kol shaperos biyado al ha'alyona. Aresha Polig Diktani Yishava Balabayis Shenasan Lo Sadinar. So, in fact, Rashi understands whether Rabbi Huda is really arguing on the first case, right? Well, what was the first case? The first case over here was where the chenveni claims that I did not pay him, right? That I did not pay him. So ultimately, again, so the Tanakama said that the balabas should swear that ultimately, again, he paid. So in this case over here, Rabbi Huda says, not true. Rabbi Huda says that halacha l'maisa, again, the only way that the chenveni would have given the produce is if he would have gotten paid. Generally, people don't give merchandise unless they have first received payment. So therefore, in this case over here, if the balabayis has the produce already, chances are he paid, and therefore, halach l'maisa, again, he does not have to swear to the fact that he paid. Now, Rashi points out over here, this is all presupposing that we're talking about a chenveni who does not extend credit. Obviously, if you're extending credit, that changes the math on this. Again, we'll see all of this in the Gemara. Next, Amr l'shulchani. I go over to a money changer and I say to him, Tain li bedinar maos. I say to the money changer, do me a favor, give me change. I'm asking for change, right? Go ahead and give me a dinar in smaller denominations of coins. Ultimately, again, the shulchani gives it to me. Amar lo tain li es dinar. So the shulchani says, okay, I gave you your change, now give me the dinar. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, tain li es dinar, amar lo nasati lecha, v'nasati bunpali. I say to the shulchan, I say to the money changer, what did I gave it to you. I gave it to you already. Right? I gave you and I saw you put the dinar in your money pouch. What's the halacha? Yishava balabayis. The balabayis swears that he went ahead and he paid. This is the same thing as the chenveni case. It's just using money changer instead of chenveni. Same idea. So the balabayis swears that ultimately, again, he gave the money. Nasan lo es hadinar. So we'll say, so now, nasan lo es hadinar, amar lo tin li es hamos. So what happens again? Now this is the reverse case. I gave the dinar, and now I say to the shulchani, to the money changer, okay, give me my change. Amar lo, nasatem lecha. What are you talking about? I gave you the change. Vishlachta l'soch kisecha. You put it in your money pouch. What's the halacha? Yishava shulchani. Ultimately, again, the shulchani has to swear that in fact he gave me the change. Rabbi Huda disagrees. Rabbi Huda says, "Ein derech shulchani litein iser ad sheyitol dinar." So we'll say Rabbi Huda's sheet is the same. Rabbi Huda says, everyone knows money changers do not give change unless, of course, what? They get the money first. Suppose you begin to see, this is Rabbi Huda l'shitasa, which is Rabbi Huda says the same way that a chenveni, a shopkeeper, does not give merchandise unless he gets paid first. The shulchani ultimately, again, does not give change unless of course he gets the payment first. So therefore, Rabbi Huda's shita is whoever is in possession of the item, whether the item be the produce or the item is the change, ultimately has the upper hand in this discussion. Incredible. All right, so let's go back there. Kishem sha'amru hapogemes ksuvasa lo tifra ela b'shvua. So we'll say, so now remember again, this is an interesting case of pogemus ksuvasa. What's pogemus ksuvasa? So Rashi points out over here, look at Rashi, Kishem Sha'amru, Mishnehi b'meseches ksuvis, b'motzia shtar ksuva, umoda shekibla miktsasa, v'nimtza shen lismoch al shtar ksuvasa. B'imtoin bashden is kabla kula, lo tifra le b'shvua. So we'll say, the case of pogemus ksuvas like this. A woman admits, right, Reuben's married to Rachel. We actually haven't had Reuben and Rachel in a very, very, very long time. Right, so I guess they were doing fine up until now, right? And so I say, so what happens? So Reuben's married to Rachel, and Rachel admits that she received partial payment of her ksuva. Now that's a case of what's called pogem ksuvasa, which means like pogem means like you diminish, or you, All right, stop talking. Stop talking. Yeah. Pogemus means almost like tarnishes a little bit, like a kos becomes pogum. When you drink from it, right? You can't use it for kiddush again. So ultimately, again, you've undermined it. So the idea over here is now why a ksuva is a document, right? And in that document, it says that Reuven owes his wife 200 zuz, or whatever the amount of the ksuva is. When she admits that she's received partial payment on that ksuva, what she's effectively done is she shows that document is no longer valid in the way that it's written. So she's undermined the effectiveness of that document. Now again, that she's doing that, right? Rachel's doing that because again, she's admitted that she's owed partial payment of that document. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, and I will say now in that case over here, lo tifra ela b'shvua. Now what this means is if she wants to go ahead and collect any more on her ksuva, now remember at that point, once she's admitted that she's received partial payment, so really the document itself, it's not that it's void, but that it can't really be used for any further collection purposes. So how does Rachel collect the rest of her ksuva? With a shvuah. She's got to swear, that's how she collects. Furthermore, if a single witness comes along and that Eid Echad says, Rachel received her ksuva, right? So a single witness says Rachel received her ksuva, same thing. Now, what does an Eid Echad do? Now remember again, an Eid Echad, halacha l'maisa again, is only valid to require a shvuah now. So an Eid Echad comes along and says Rachel got paid for her ksuva. Okay, so now if Rachel wants anything else, she's going to have to take a shvuah. Minechasim mishubadim or minechasim yisomim. In general, again, if a person will say this is true for ksuva, but this is true for anything else as well. If you want to collect from encumbered property, or if you want to collect from the possessions of yisomim, lo tifra ela b'shvuah. You can only collect with a shvuah. Vanefras shelo b'fanav lo tifra ela b'shvuah. Similarly, again, if a woman is going to collect her ksuva, not in the presence of her husband, she requires a shvuah. Now, Rashi points out there, what's that case? Let's say the husband is overseas. He sends his wife a ksuva. He sends his wife a get. So now she wants to collect her ksuva. She can collect her ksuva even if he's overseas, but she can only collect it with a shvuah. So to Yisomim, right? Orphans can only collect. Now, we're going to see in the Gemara what this is really referring to is if you have orphans, or again, we have whenever we think about orphans, we think about young children. In this case over here, it just means their father died. They're collecting the debt of their father, or they're collecting something owed to their father. They can only collect with a shvuah. And what's the shvuah? So again, we've seen this concept many times before. Remember, in halacha, there is this tension. What's the tension? Father dies, right? We'll call him Yaakov. Yaakov dies. Yaakov leaves behind sons, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Now, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi want to collect the debts of their father. So what happens? Well, what's the issue? What's the tension? The tension is that we assume that children are often not versed in the affairs of the estate of their father, right? So therefore, again, there's this little bit of concern that maybe they don't really know what's going on. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, any time that Yisomim want to collect the debt of their father, they have to do so with a shvuah. Now, interestingly enough, what's the shvuah? So here the Mishnah, we've seen this before, but now the Mishnah adds on some very interesting details. The Mishnah says over here, shvuah shelo pakadnu abba. We swear that our father never told us that this debt was paid. V'lo amar lana Abba, right? Our father never told us that this debt was paid. V'lo, in other words, lo pakara means our father never charged us, right? In other words, he never gave us instructions that this debt was paid. He never told us that our debt was paid. V'lo shalomatzinu bein shtarosav shel Abba shishtar ze parua. And we never found within our father's paperwork any indication that this outstanding debt was paid. So both say this is very interesting. So what they're swearing essentially is, to the best of our knowledge, father never told us that this debt that is due to our estate was paid. And therefore, we are coming to collect on this. Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says, Afilu nolat haben la'achar misasa'av, Harez and Nishpav and Otel. You know, as well say, you might have thought that this only applies to sons who were alive at the time that their father was alive. But maybe, let's say, a son is born after the death of his father. Maybe he for sure should not be able to collect the debts of his estate. Kamash no, he takes a shvuah that to the best of his knowledge, again, these debts have never been paid, and therefore Allah Chalamayse, he has the ability to go ahead and collect it. Incredible. Amr b'Shim ben Gamliel. Im yesh edim she'amra av b'shas misaso shtar ze eino paruahu no tal below b'shvuah. So this is very interesting. B'Shim Gamliel says, if there are witnesses who said that a father said on his deathbed, this debt has never been paid. In other words, so the father's saying, Yaakov saying, Yitzchak owes me money, and the debt has not been paid, then ultimately, again, Shmuel says, the children could collect on that even without the Shevuos. In other words, the Shevuos, what's interesting about what comes out is as follows. What's the role of the Shevuos when it comes to the children collecting on the debts owed to their father? The Shevuah is the mechanism that ensures that the children do their due diligence. Because since there's concern that children don't know the affairs of their father's estate, that they may or may not have clarity. So the Shevuah ensures that they will endeavor to have clarity. But Allah, if the father made it explicitly clear on his deathbed, right, that again, Yitzchak owes me this money, and this debt has never been paid, the children could collect on that debt even without a Shevuah. Incredible. So we'll say, Ve'elu nishpan shlo b'tainan. And we'll say, now this is riveting. So we'll say, so now there's another category of Shevuos. So remember again, so this whole Mishnah has been speaking on, it's called Shevuos Heses, right, rabbinic Shevuos. Now in this last section of the Mishnah, there's another detail over here. Rabbi say, now up until now, we've always been focusing on one basic idea, which is that a Shevuah a Shevuah is triggered by a claim, right? You have to be claiming something. And sometimes, again, one of the mechanisms that we use to go ahead and resolve a disputed claim is a Shevuah. Now, there's another type of Shevuah. This type of Shevuah doesn't require a claim, but could just be ordered at the insistence of one of the parties who watch this case. That's what it means. These are the people who could swear, or who could be ordered to swear, even without a taina, even without a claim. Who is this? Hashutfin. So Rabbi said, we're going to see all of these cases aside, but this is actually fascinating. So let's say you're in a partnership with someone. Either partner could always order the other partner to swear about matters of the business, even without a defined claim. Arisin, sharecroppers, apotropin, executors of an estate, va'isha hanosas vanosenes besoch habayis, or a woman who runs the household, right? She does business within the household. Uben habayis, and a son, ultimately, again, who also helps run a household. So I'll say, so in all of these cases, what's the chap over here? All of these people have access to assets, and often unlimited access to assets. As a result, the klal gadol in life is we all need something to keep us honest, right? We all need something to keep us honest, right? So it would be nice to think, like the Mishnah of it says, da mala mala mincha, know what is above you. Ayin roa, a seeing eye, ozen shomas, a listening ear, v'chol ma'asecha b'sefer nechtavin. Everything I do is written down. What's the point of that Mishnah, Bosai? What's the point of it? The point of the Mishnah is, keeps me honest. Well, at least it tries to keep me honest, right? That Lamaisa, to know everything I say, everything I do is heard, is seen, is mamish written down. That's the way we work, right? That's the way we work. In other words, accountability is, and even that, if we're honest with ourselves, doesn't really work all of the time. all of us need some level of accountability. In all of these cases, these people have access to all of the assets, right? So again, partners, sharecroppers, executors, a woman who's running the household, a son who's running the household, all of these people have unlimited access to all of the assets. So I will say, so that could be a recipe of disaster. A person can misappropriate, a person can move stuff around, a person can do things they're not supposed to be doing. So I will say, so now what can happen? Amrlo, ma'ata toinini. So again, so let's say, for example, in a partnership. So I go over, right, Ruvain's my partner, I go over to Ruvain and say, Ruvain, I want you to swear. Now again, what exactly I'm asking Ruvain to swear, we'll have to see in the Gemara. Sounds like what I'm asking. I swear that you have not misappropriated anything. So Reuven says to me, what are you claiming? So I say to Reuven, I just want you to swear to me. So chayiv, what's the halacha? Ultimately, Reuven's chayiv. So it sounds like an honesty oath, right? Swear to me that you have not misappropriated any assets. And if ultimately, again, I say that to Reuven, that triggers a shua that Reuven has to take towards me. Incredible. And I will say, by the way, so Reuven can say back, well, what do you think I did wrong? I say, nothing. It's just a partnership shvua. So I say, Salach l'maisa, the Mishnah says he has to swear. Even though, again, in this case, there's no defined claim. Now, however, chalko hashutvin va'arisin en yochal lashpia. And I will say, now, the ability to trigger this claim is only so far as the partnership or the sharecropping or any of these relationships are currently intact. Once the relationships have been dissolved, so neither party has the ability to make the other take a retroactive shua. In other words, so let's say Reuven and I, we dissolve our partnership. And then again, 6 months later, I go up to him and say, Reuven, I want you to swear to me that when we were partners, you did not misappropriate any money. I can't do that. The only ability to trigger this shvua is when we are actively engaged in the shutfas. However, an interesting exception, nisgalgelo shvua mimakom acher, megalgelin alav es hakol. So I will say this is very interesting. However, if let's say Reuven and I, so we dissolved our partnerships. Obviously, once we dissolved our partnership, I cannot ask him to swear about our partnership. But let's say again, Reuven and I get into an issue. I deposit something with Reuven. Reuven claims that the object was stolen. I tell him to take a Shevuos sapikadon. Once he's taking a Shevuos sapikadon, then about say, you've seen this before, it's kind of like Gilgul Shvuah. What does Gilgul Shvuah say? Gilgul Shvuah says, once I'm already swearing about something, essentially, we could pile on as many other claims as we want during that Shvuah as well. So let's say again now, I'm going to have Reuven take a Shvuah because again, he's claiming my pikadon was stolen. I want him to swear that he really did not misappropriate it. Once he does that, then I could also add on to that a Shvuah about the times that we were partners. Incredible. Well, so the Mishnah ends off, Vashias mishametes as Shvuah. Shemitah cancels oaths. Now, what exactly that means, we'll have to see in the Gemara, but quite intriguing. Okay, I will say, Shkoyach, that's the Mishnah, says the Gemara. Call Nishma Shabbatar Nishma V'lo Mishalmin. But remember again, how did the Mishnah start? The Mishnah started with the statement that any biblical oath, the way it works is you swear, and by swearing you exempt yourself from payment. Gemara says, how do we know that? So the Gemara says, on the Amar Kra, we'll say first of the widest lines, the Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, V'lakach ba'alav v'lo yishalim. Because the pasuk says, the pasuk says literally again, V'lakach ba'alav, the person will swear, v'lo yishalim, they won't pay. So from here you see, Mishalav l'shalim lo shvua. He who would have paid takes the shvua, and by taking the shvua, he exempts himself from the obligation to pay. Incredible. Ve'elu nishmon minotlin. These are the people ultimately again who swear and take. So the Gemara says, remember again, one of the most interesting things over here is in what we'll call employee protections. I will say, brother, it's really incredible to see. It's really incredible to see that Chazal really had these fantastic and incredible sensitivities to really go ahead and protect those who may be most vulnerable. It's fascinating. So again, for example, the greatest example of that is Ksuva, because certainly again, the whole yisod of Ksuva was to protect interests of a woman who would have been exceptionally vulnerable in a case of divorce or in a case of being widowed, and also these employee protection rights. What does the Mishnah say? Right? If the Mishnah says, what was the case of the employee? Let's remember again, I work for Reuven. I go to Reuven and say, Reuven, I want to get paid. Reuven says, I paid you. So I say, no, you didn't. What's the halacha? What's the halacha? I swear, and I get paid. Now understand, before this Mishnah, How would you have paskin? You be the posek, right? I go over to Reuven. I say, Reuven, you owe me my money. Reuven says, I paid you. What's halacha? What's halacha? Simple, right? This is most. What are you talking about? You go to someone, you say they owe you money. Okay, shkoyach, prove it. Shabbos said, this is incredible. So Chazal said, in this case, we don't say motzi mechaver alavaraya. In this case, Chazal said to the employee, if you're willing to swear, all you need to do is swear you did not get paid, and you will get paid. That's tremendous. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So So what's unique about an employee? In other words, we'll say, why did Chazal do this? Right? This really is a tremendous change to just the basic way that the law should unfold. Why did Chazal do this? Rabbi Shmuel, halachos kidolos shanukan. So Shmuel said these are big halachos that we're passing over here. The Gemara says, 1 second. Halachos, honey. The Gemara says, I'm sorry. Halachos kashanukan. Halachos, honey hilchasaninu. The Gemara says halachos, and both in general, halacha means biblical. Is this a biblical law? The Gemara says, Elaima takanos gidolos shanukan. No. This is not a halacha. So again, the terminology is very important. Halacha means biblical. This is a takana. What does that takana mean? Tirabanan. So the Gemara says, Gidolos, Mechlal Diika Kitanos. So I understand what this big takanas, this small takanas, this takanas I like, takanas I don't like, takanas I do, takanas I don't do. Right? What does that mean? Again, in other words, Gemara just now we're getting the right verbiage down. So it's not a halacha, it's a takana. But what do you mean when you say that it's a big takana? Ela Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Shmuel, takanos kvuos shanukan. No. Rather, what we mean to say over here is what's called takanos kivuos. Chazal are creating a lasting piece of legislation. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Akrua rabbanon l'shuan balabayis v'shajua aschir mishum kedei chayav. So I'll say, so what happened over here? Ultimately, again, really Chazal took the shvuah from the balabayis, right? Really, the balabayis should have been the one who swore that he already paid, right? And they gave the right to swear to the schir, to the employee. Why? Mishum kidei chayav. Ultimately, again, for his livelihood. So say the whole chap of this is they wanted the employee to know that he always has a way to ensure that he gets paid. Right? In other words, the power is in his hands. If he's willing to take that shvuah, ultimately, again, he will get paid. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. The Gemara says, but I understand, is that fair? I got it. We want to secure employees' rights. But because we want to secure employees' rights, we should put the employer, the balabayas, at a disadvantage. So the Gemara says, no. Balabayas kufei nechali de mishtab eschir v'shakil. No, it's actually in the best interest of the employee also that if the employer, that if the employee wants to swear, he can get his wages. Why? Ki hechen de isgar only po'alin. So remember again, every employer. What does every employer need? What does every employer need? Employees, right? So now, again, for the employer, it also works well that the employee is able to get paid. Why? Because that means people are going to be more willing to hire themselves out. So you both say, again, everyone knows, right? There is a shortage of good people. There's a shortage of good people. Oh, it's not really a shortage of good people. There's just a shortage of people who want to work, right? So Lamaisa, again, so therefore, again, this whole thing, right? The labor market, everyone is tied together. So in other words, just follow the progression over here. Chazal said we want to legislate in favor of the employee. So the employee knows that if there's ever a salary dispute, the employee has the control. He swears and he gets paid. Gemara says, 1 second. So that's giving him an advantage. Isn't that a disadvantage to the employer? No. Because since the employee knows that he gets paid, therefore what? He'll be more willing to work. Because he's more willing to work, that's good news for the employer. So therefore, everyone is happy. Adarabba, just the opposite. Schir nechali d'l'shtava balabayis v'nafka ki d'l'hechid l'gari balabayis. So the Gemara said, 1 second. If you give the shvuah to the balabayis, that might work better for the employee. Why? Because then, if the employer has the ability to swear and therefore control payroll, he'll be more willing to hire employees, which means work will be more available. pay will be more available. To which the Gemara says, no. Balabayis bal karchei agir. No, we'll say the employer is always at a disadvantage. Why? Because he's going to need a workforce. Now, regardless, he needs people. So the Gemara says, schir nami al karchei miskar. Okay, we'll say, but the employee also is at a disadvantage. Why? Because he also needs a job. Ella, so we'll say, rather, what's going on over here? Here we go. Ella balabayis tarud b'pa'alafu. So we'll say, here's the issue. Not deep down, but really what we feel is actually happening over here is sometimes there are confusions about payroll. Why does confusion about payroll happen over here? There's nothing actually, there's nothing illicit occurring. Rather, what happens? Bepashtos, the employer employs a bunch of people. And remember what happens. So again, I employ Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi, and just in the course of handing out the paychecks, I thought that I paid Ruvain, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I did it. It's really just an honest mistake. Chazal were concerned about this. So because they were concerned about this, they gave the power to the employee to swear about whether or not he got paid. So again, we could attribute sometimes the confusion to just an honest mistake, and therefore we give the power to the employee to swear. So the Gemara says, "V'lei sivlei below shvua." So if that's the case, why not believe the employee even without a shvua? Right? In other words, if we're assuming over here, there's nothing, right? No one's trying to pull any shenanigans, right? There's no shtick over here. But rather, again, just the employer gets a little bit he gets just a little bit overwhelmed with running his business, and therefore, again, he thought he paid this one, he didn't pay this one. So Reuben comes along and says, "I didn't get paid." So Chazal said, "Okay, take a shvua that you didn't get paid." If that's the case, that we're really believing everybody in this case, why not allow the employee to get paid even without a shvua? No, hold up there. That's not fair to the employer, right? Because again, the employer really thinks that he paid Ruvain. Now again, if Ruvain's willing to swear that he did not get paid, then fine, then the Balabayas will take him at his word. But we're not going to just pay him without a shvua. So the Gemara says, so I have a better idea. Why not say that part of Hilchos payroll is that when you pay your employees, you should have to pay them with witnesses? Right? Save a lot of time. Right? Save time and effort. So right, that's Hilchos payroll. Hilchos payroll, you pay your employees, pay them in front of witnesses. To which the Gemara says, no, trecha le milsa. That's a tircha. That's a tircha. We'll say, can you imagine that? Right? A person's running a large business, and every single time he pays his employees, people may be on different pay schedules. Every time he pays his employees, he's got to pay them in front of witnesses. That's too much. It's interesting. The leisiv le meikara. So we'll say, this is fascinating. Why not prepay your employees, right? Just pay them in the beginning of the day, and that way there's no problem. And we'll say, by the way, I just want to tell you something amazing. What's fascinating about this statement is there must have been such a dramatically different work ethic in the times of the Gemara, right? You hear this today. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? You're going to prepay employees. Oh, you know what? Here, take this, right? Here, you know what? Here's today's pay. Here's today's wages, right? Hatzlacha, do a great job, right? In other words, it's just fascinating. But the fact that the Gemara is even floating this idea means that, like, someone thought that this is actually viable. This is actually viable. So it's incredible. Now, it would be beautiful to think that people would be so committed to their job and so committed to their task. But again, I'm just pointing out the fact that it's a havamina means that, again, in times of the Gemara, they actually entertain this possibility. So the Gemara just says essentially, now remember, the idea is that why does confusion occur? Confusion occurs because maybe at the end of the day or the end of the week, whenever payroll is happening, there's a lot of stuff happening. So the Gemara says, why don't you eliminate the confusion that when every employee goes in and shows up at the beginning of the day, the Balabayas pays them. Here's Shefela, here's your money, right? Here's the wages. Hatzlacha, go out, make it a great day, right? So now why don't we just do that? So the Gemara says, no, this is interesting. Shnei and rotzin ba'akafa. No one wants to prepay. No one wants to prepay. Now, we'll say, literally, hakafa means credit. Now, why does no one want to prepay? So Rashi points out to us something very interesting. So the Balabayas, the employer, doesn't want to prepay. Why? Because sometimes he doesn't have the money, right? Sometimes he doesn't have that money, won't have that money until the end of the day. And interestingly enough, the employee doesn't want that money either, right? Why? Because that means the whole day now he's got to keep his pay, his wages in his pocket. He doesn't want to have to do that, right? Instead, he wants to come at the end of the day to be able to go ahead and get paid afterwards. So we'll say incredible. If that's the case, afilu katzatz nami. So we'll say, so at the end of the day, so we'll say, so now I just want to point out over here. So here's what's happening. The Mishnah told us halacha. I go over to Reuven and say, Reuven, I worked for you for the day. You owe me $100. Reuven says, I paid you already. I say, no, you didn't. So what's the halacha? What's the halacha? I swear, the employee swears that I did not get paid, and Reuven is obligated to pay me. A rabbinic halacha. Why did Chazal institute this? Why? Because the assumption was that Reuven is very busy running his business. He thought he paid me. He didn't really pay me. And therefore, Chazal gave the power to the employee to go ahead and extract his wages through a Shevuos. The Gemara says, so if that's what this is about, that the employer is just, he's tarud, right? He's fatumult. He's got a lot going on with running his business. And therefore, again, he's not trying to cheat me. He just maybe is not keeping track of everything. And that's why I take the Shevuos to clarify that. Then the halakha should be the same thing if there is a dispute about the amount of wages owed. So say, in the Mishnah's case, I'm saying to Reuven, you owe me money for today's work. Reuven said, I paid you, right? Now, the Gemara says, but if the logic that we just espoused is correct, then even if the dispute is not about whether or not I got paid, but the dispute is how much Reuven owes me, then we should also say that I should take a Shevuos and ultimately go ahead and be able to extract my wages. Yet, Allah Tanya, why did we learn about this? 45b, second line. So what happens? I say, Reuven, so right, it's the end of the day, Sunday, I worked for Reuven today. I say, Reuven, pay me. You agreed to pay me $200 for today's work. Reuven says, hold up there. I only agreed to pay you $100. What's the halacha? So the Gemara says, Hamotzi mechaver alav haraya. So what? So in that case, so here, what do we say? So again, Reuven's going to pay me the 100 because that's what we both agreed to. But if I feel that Reuven owes me another $100, then halacha l'maaseh again, the burden of proof is on me, the employee, to extract the money. But one second, why don't we say that an employer is often preoccupied with the details of running his business and he messed up? I should be able to swear that Reuven contracted with me for $200 and that's it. Yet over here, it's very interesting. Ketzitza vaday matkir dacherle. Never say, an employer may get confused about whether or not he paid. The one thing he always knows is what? How much he agreed to pay to every single person. So as Rabbi say, here's what's interesting. In other words, the assumption always is that an employer knows that I agreed to the amount that I agreed to pay you. What I may get confused is, did I pay you or not? Right? That's the case in the Mishnah. The case in Shabbos is, right, Reuven's not disputing that I'm a contracted employee for $100 a day. That's not what he's disputing. What he's disputing is, he says, I paid you already. I say, you didn't pay me already. So then Chazal said, okay, take a Shevuos that I didn't get paid, and I can extract the payment. But when it comes to the amount that's paid, that we assume the employer is crystal clear on. And if I want to claim that he owes me more money, you agreed to pay me $200, then halacha l'maaseh, ultimately, again, that's on me, the employee, to extract. So the Gemara says, Ihachi, afilu avar zmano. Nami, if that's the case, then even if the window, remember again, we saw this back in our Sanhedrin days. What's the halacha? The halacha is you have to pay wages in a timely fashion. Now again, the definition of timely depends on what? The nature of the employment, right? Is it a day laborer? Is it a weekly laborer? A yearly laborer? So all that depends. So why did we learn? Avers mana v'lo nasalo hareze eno nishba v'notel. So Rabbi said this is very interesting. So Rabbi said this whole idea of nishba v'notel, interestingly enough, only applies if I'm claiming my wages within the window that I'm supposed to get paid. So for example, let's say I'm a day laborer. So let's remember again, how does it work for a day laborer? What's considered to be the window of payment is the next period of time, right? So let's say I work by day, he pays me that night. So when we say nishba v'notel, that's if, let's say, so Sunday I worked for Reuven, Sunday night I go to Reuven and say, Reuven, you didn't pay me. Reuven says, yes, I did. I can swear that I did not get paid, and ultimately, again, collect wages like that. If, however, interestingly enough, the Brisa says over here that if I wait till Monday, ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa, I can't swear and extract money. That then reverts back to what? Motzi mechaver alav haraya. Why? Chazaka ein balabayis over bebal talin. Wow. Shabbos say there is a chazaka that an employer pays his workers. Fascinating. Shabbos say. So this is really riveting. Really riveting. So I guess so just kind of like to put this together. Someone says over here like this. There's a general concern that an employer is going to be busy with the details of running his business, and therefore it is possible to think that he paid his worker when he didn't really pay his worker. That is possible. So therefore, Chazal said that if you're the employee and you're coming to claim your wages, right? Now the piece that's being added over, you're coming to claim your wages when? In the window when they are collectible, and I say I didn't get paid, Reuven says I did pay you, I can swear that I didn't get paid, and I can get paid. But interestingly enough, that takana is only in the window of payment. If let's say I wait till Monday morning, and now I come to Reuven and I say, Reuven, you didn't pay me. Reuven says, yes, I did. The halacha sides with Reuven, the employer. Why? Chazaka, that an employer, or say chazaka, that an employer pays his employees on time. That's the chazaka. That's the chazaka. And therefore, again, if I, the employee, want to claim otherwise, do I have the ability to do so? Can I? Can I? Sure, I can make the claim, but it's amotzi mechavera alav haraya. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Va'amrit balabayis tarba po'alav. But we just said before that a balabayis, right, that the employer is often busy with the details of running his business. So why don't they say even here, maybe he just missed the window for paying? So we'll say this is before the zman, the time that he's obligated to pay comes about. But ultimately, again, when the time for payment actually comes, we assume that the balabayis is on top of this and ultimately, again, pays his employees in a meaningful time. So fascinating construct we have over here, right? So during the time when the actual employee is owed his money, Chazal made a takana, he can swear and get paid. After the window for proper payment, halachic payment passes, the chazaka then is that the employer paid his workers, and if a worker wants to claim to the contrary, that is going to be amotzi mechaver alav haraya. Incredible. So the Gemara says, one second. So you're telling me now. Let's put me on the bones over here. Right. So I worked for Reuven on Sunday. Right. Reuven owes me $100. So now what happens? I show up. So if I show up Sunday night, I can swear and get paid. If I show up Monday morning, then what's the halacha? Why? Because chazaka, that Reuven, my employer, doesn't delay paying his employees. 1 second. But when I come on Monday morning and claim my wages, over mishum bal tigzal, right? What do you think I'm doing? But don't I have a chazaka that I'm honest? Right? Isn't there a chazaka that I don't try to steal stuff from people? The Gemara says that over mishum bal tigzal, gabi balabayis. So the Gemara says gabi balabayis iketshei chazaka. So what the Gemara is saying is like this. One say I don't have a chazaka. What's my chazaka? That I'm honest. You're saying the chazaka is that the balabayis doesn't violate delaying paying wages. Got it. I also have a chazaka that I don't steal stuff. Everybody has to have at least some chazaka, right? My chazaka is I don't steal stuff. If that's the case, I should have a chazaka that vests me with believability to make the claim on my wages even Monday morning. But say, watch this. The balabais has two chazakas, right? Number one, chada de'in balabais over bebal talin. Right? So we'll say ultimately again, chazaka number one is that the balabais does not delay paying his wages. The chada de'in sacher mashes chara. We'll say, what's the second chazaka? The second chazaka is that people generally don't wait to collect their wages. Right? Generally, people don't say, you know what, I know that I'm supposed to get paid. I'll get around to collecting that when I have a chance. Right? In other words, so these two chazakas. Number one, a balabayis does not delay paying wages. And chazaka number two is employees do not delay collecting their wages. So therefore, because the balabayis has those two chazakas, it's true, the schir, right, the worker has one chazaka. What's his chazaka? That he doesn't steal. But the two chazakas of the balabayis outweigh the one chazaka ultimately of the schir. Incredible. Amr Nachman, Amr Shmuel. So we'll say more qualifications to this rule. Lo shonu ela shesachro be'edim. I will say furthermore, this whole thing over here, right? This whole thing that going back to the Shevuos. So now let's go back to the Mishnah. What's the original takana? So the original takana is I work for Reuven on Sunday, right? I finish my day of work. I come now understanding on coming Sunday night. I say, Reuven, pay me the $100 you owe me. Reuven says, I'm sorry, I paid you already. What's the halacha? What's the halacha? I swear and collect the payment. So Rav Nachman comes along and says, by the way, that's only true when Reuven hired me in front of witnesses. So there are witnesses that I was in the employ of Reuven. Also, listen to this. Let's say Reuven hired me without witnesses, right? So in other words, which Rabbi say means what? Which means what? There is no independent verification of my employment, right? There's no legal proof that I was ever employed by Reuven. In that case, we talk sheyachal lomar lo scharticha me'olam, yachal lomar lo scharticha v'nasati lecha scharech. Shabbos say, this is incredible. Rabbi say, listen to this. There's a migo. What's the migo? So listen to this. All of this is, right? So watch this. So I work for Reuven on Sunday, and I come Sunday night to go ahead and claim my wages. So now the Mishnah said there's a takana. Reuven says, I paid you. I say I didn't get paid. I swear that I didn't get paid, and I collect my money. When is that? When there is independent legal verification of my employment. Right? Because then Reuven has to acknowledge that at least in some way he owes me money. He claims he paid it to me. I claim he didn't pay it to me. But if there is no independent verification of my employment, then Reuven has a migo. What's his migo? When I show up Sunday night and I say, Reuven, you owe me $100 for working for you today, Reuven could say to me, who are you? Right? Hi, Shalom Aleichem, nice to meet you. Right? You work for me? I don't think we have any type of employment relationship. So because he has that migo, therefore what? He's believed to say that he paid me already. Incredible. So both say, so again, that statement was made by Rav Nachman, right, in the name of Shmuel. Amar le Rabbi Yitzchak, Yasher. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Shkoyach, right, Shkoyach. That is an excellent point. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said this same idea as well, right? So Rav Nachman said it's the name of Shmuel, and ultimately, again, Rabbi Yochanan said this same idea. So the Gemara says, Michlal, the Palagalei Reish Lakish. Now, interestingly enough, so Rabbi Yochanan said this as well. So now, in general, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were disputants, right? So are we to assume that because ultimately Rabbi Yitzchak is quoting the same Rabbi Yochanan, that Reish Lakish disagreed? So the Gemara is listening to this, Rabbi, it's incredible. Some say that, when this conversation was happening in the Beis Medrash, so what happened? Reish Lakish heard it, right? But he was drinking. Right? So he was silent not because he agreed or disagreed. He was just silent ultimately because he was having a drink. He was just drinking something. So you can't drink and speak at the same time. So by the way, just so incredible, right? How the Gemara says how often we read into people's reactions or the things that people do. We create narratives all the time around people's behaviors that may or may not be correct. But it's fascinating. We build entire narratives over what we perceive people to be doing or not doing. So now Reish Lakish doesn't say anything when they say that to Rabbi Yochanan. He didn't say anything. Does he agree, disagree? He was drinking a glass of water, right? The guy was drinking a glass of water. He just couldn't respond at the time that things, others say, Misha haveshayle, v'shasikle. Others say no, that when Rabbi Yochanan was saying his piece, Reish Lakish was deferential as he was speaking and allowed him to finish up his thought before he went ahead and weighed in. Incredible. Okay, Amar Itmar Nami, Amar Rav Nashir Bar Zvid, Amar Rav, Lo Shan L'Shazach Rabbi Eidim. Avasachar bel shalo beidim mitok sheyachal lomar lo scharticha me'olam yachar lomar lo scharticha v'nasati lecha schar. So what I say, so incredible. So what I say again, just another support to this idea that this whole yisod, right? This whole yisod ultimately again of the ability of the employee to take a shvuah and collect payment is only when there is independent legal verification of his employment status. But if there is no independent legal verification of his employment status, then when confronted by the claim that Reuven didn't pay me, Reuven could easily say, I don't know who you are. I don't owe you anything because I never employed you. Since he has that migo, therefore he is believed ultimately to say that I paid you but I paid you already as well. Amrai bar Chama, Kama Malya. So the Gemara says, Kama Malya Hashmaisa. Right? How beautiful is this statement? Amarle Rava, my Malyusa. ultimately, again, so said, what's the milo over here? So the Gemara says, Im came Shevuos Shomrim Dechayib Rachmana. Because without it, ultimately, again, how do you ever have a case of Shevuos HaShomrim? Now, both remember again, Shevuos HaShomrim means I deposit something with someone to watch over it. And now, again, let's say, for example, whether it's a Shomer Chinam or Shomer, so whatever type of Shomer it is, there's different levels of liability. Now, I come to collect my object. So let's take a case of a Shomer Chinam, right? The Shomer Chinam claims that it was stolen. Now, technically speaking, an unpaid custodian Shomer Chinam is pater for Gneva Va'aveda. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So how can you ever have a Shevuos HaShomrim? Listen to after all. Mitoch Shechal Omer Lo, Lo Hayu Dvar Me'olam, Yachal Omer Lo Ne'ensu. So we'll say, so listen to this. Sa'alocha l'maisa, again, it must be that in general, in order to be able to make a lot of these claims against people, the relationships must have been made with eidos. Right? I will say a typical case of a shomer. A typical case of shomer. Again, I deposit something with Ruvain. I say, Ruvain, watch my lawnmower, right? So now Reuben's a shomer chino, he's an unpaid custodian. So now I come back to get my lawnmower. Reuben says, I'm so sorry, there was a break-in, all they took was your lawnmower, okay? I say, fine, Reuben, it's not that I don't believe you, but I don't believe you. And therefore, again, you're a shomer chinom, you should swear that the lawnmower was stolen and you didn't misappropriate it. So what stops Reuben from saying to me, who are you? In other words, I don't even know who you are. It must be that what? All of these cases where there's an obligation of Shevuah must be where these relationships were created and concretized in the presence of Eidim. Because without independent legal verification that the relationship ever existed, all of these people have a migo. What's the migo? You never gave me a lawnmower. So it must be that even just in a typical case of a shomer, the whole way that it's happening is only if I deposited the object with Ruvain in front of witnesses. It's fascinating. I never really thought about this before, but now this kind of sheds light on all of these things. Right? So ultimately, again, because since Ruvain could deny the whole thing, I never took your lawnmower, therefore he should be believed to say that ultimately what? It was an extenuating circumstance. The afkid luhu be'edim umitoch sheyachal lomer lo hechzartiv. I'm sorry. Umitoch sheyachal lomer lo hechzartiv lecha yachal lomer lo anansu. The afkid. So okay, we'll say no to do. We'll stop over for today because we'll pick up with this case of Shomrim Mirat Hashem tomorrow because it goes on for a little bit. So we'll say, but again, what's fast? So again, just so you're clear on the construct, right? So the Mishnah introduces us a Shevuos Hesis, a rabbinic Shevuah, specifically created for the employee. What's the Shevuah? I work for Ruvain Sunday. Ruvain owes me $100. I go to Ruvain Sunday night to collect my money. Ruvain says, I paid you. The halacha assumes that Ruvain is busy running a business, so maybe he forgot that he paid me. Therefore, what did Chazal say? I'm allowed to swear that I did not get paid, and I'm allowed to collect my payment. But now, halacha l'maisa, two caveats. Caveat number one, when am I showing up? Sunday night. If I wait until Monday to collect payment, then what? Then I can't collect. Why? Because Reuben has two chazakas working for him. Chazak number one, Balabais, an employer, does not delay paying his employees. And number two, employees do not wait to collect their wages. Furthermore, the only time the Shevuah works is when this employment was solidified in the presence of witnesses. But if it was not solidified in the presence of witnesses, then Reuven does not have to pay. There is no Shevuah. Why? Because he has a migo. What's the migo? He could claim, I never saw you before in my life. And because he has that migo to claim that I never saw you before in my life, therefore I wouldn't have to pay. As I will say, and now we're going to see how we apply this concept of eidos to general cases of shomrim as well. Shkayach, everyone. All right, Chevra on Zoom. Especially again, Chaver and Eretz Yisrael. Should be a week of Besaros Tovos and Shmir Yisrael for all of you and for your families. And Halavai, complete victory and Bracha for all of Klal Yisrael.
Shevuos is in front of us, right?